Hello, my friends. I didn't see you come in. I'm Young Chomsky, and this is the Young Chomsky Synthesizer Hour. That concludes my prepared remarks. If you're looking for Brace and Liz, you've come to the wrong place, because this is the Young Chomsky Synthesizer Hour. Can everybody hear me okay? Great. So, what I have planned for tonight is at least two parts. We're going to start with a little synthesizer tutorial, because some folks have been requesting that. So I thought we would do a little Synth 101, see how that goes. Analog synth basics. And then we would do a little Ambient Jam. And maybe I'm going to debut a little track that I have been working on. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. So, hope everybody can see okay. We've got a bit of a Joe Biden situation here due to the high ceilings. It's a little difficult to get the lighting right, but I went and Bernie Sanders did. And I got my floor lamp here, which you can't see. But I'm going to go handheld mode to give you a close-up on the synths. We're going to go Steadicam. So yeah, bear with me. We're gonna dive deep here, and we're gonna do a real tutorial on analog synthesis, because this is something that I'm really enthusiastic about, and it's something that I think everybody can get into. And you know, if this tickles your fancy. As soon as we're done, there's actually a lot of free software that you can download and dive right in and start making your own electronic music. So let's have a look. Come with me. So hopefully you can see this all right. What we're looking at here, what I'm going to use to demonstrate for you today, is the Roland Juno JU06A, which first of all, this is basically a miniaturized recreation of a classic analog synthesizer called the Juno 60, which was made in the 80s. So first of all, real quick basics. What is a synthesizer? Right? Maybe you don't know that. So a synthesizer is basically an electronic instrument that produces sound in real time by the means by which the sound is controlled is kind of open-ended, right? A lot of people associate it with a keyboard, but it doesn't necessarily have to have a keyboard. As you can see, this this synth right here is what's called like a synth module. It's just a little box. It doesn't have a keyboard attached to it. I control it via a different keyboard. I mean, some synths have different types of input devices, like you might know a theremin, right? A theremin is that thing with basically antenna, and you wave your hands in the air and you control it with electromagnetic fields. But anyway, the point is those are types of synthesizers, and they have some kind of means of shaping the sound. They're generating that sound in real time, and the operator is controlling the sound and shaping the sound production. And so the first synthesizers were collections of different modules. If you can picture the types of synthesizers that are big kind of walls of units, and you plug things into other things. And those are still around. They're called modular synthesizers. But then the consumer synth market was kind of revolutionized when we started seeing Moog synthesizers come out with these fixed architecture synths. And the point is, it's the same idea, but you don't have to do the patching, the plugging of things into other things yourself. But what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what is actually going on inside. We're going to go over some of these modules. And if you understand one, how it works on one, you're going to kind of understand how it works on all of them. So what you need to know about this is actually a digital device here, but it is emulating an analog device. And so just to understand that terminology, analog means it's continuously variable, right? It's controlled by electrical voltages that is actually, giving you the sound shaping capability, as opposed to, you know, this just has software inside it that's emulating that kind of an instrument. And that's not really important because it works the same way. Okay, so the first thing that we need to look at here is, if I can push in here, you see this panel labeled DCO. All right, so DCO stands for Digitally Controlled Oscillator. So the oscillator is the part of a synth that gives you a pitch. So I am going to turn this one on, and so I'm talking a lot and you're not hearing any music, so I'm just going to hit play on a little pattern and you're going to hear some sound, right? Cool, did y'all heard a little bit of music there? Yeah. So that was an oscillator, and you see the one that I turned on. So this synthesizer has 3 types of oscillators. It has a Sawtooth Oscillator, which is the one I just played. It has a square or a pulse oscillator, and it has a sub oscillator. All right, so let's just listen to what those sound like, and then we'll talk about what they mean. So this here's again is the Sawtooth. All right, here is a square wave. Yeah, sorry, that's a square wave. And then the sub actually is also a square on this synth, and it's going to be an octave lower. All right, so what does that mean? So first of all, hopefully you heard some differences between those. I'll try to give you the kind of brief explanation without getting too deep into it. But those were all playing the same notes, right? The same pitches, but they had a different quality to them, right? So when we hear different instruments playing the same notes, or if you can imagine 2 different voices, for instance, different people's voices, different singers, and you ask them to sing the same note, you would be able to tell, maybe, you know, if you had 2 people with very different voices, they could sing the same note, like a middle C, but you would be able to tell their voices apart if they had different voices. And so why is that? Well, a big part of the reason that their voices sound different is because different instruments or different voices have different overtones in them. And so overtones are pitches or frequencies present in a sound besides just the what's called the fundamental pitch, meaning the pitch that we name, the middle C or whatever pitch that we perceive as the true pitch, the basic pitch, right? So if we say middle C, that's the pitch that we hear, but there's other notes present there as well. And the relative strength of those different notes gives us what we call timbre, and timbre means the quality of a sound. So different types of waveforms, whether it's a sawtooth or a square wave, those produce different timbres, different qualities of sound. And the reason is they have different overtones. They have different amounts of frequencies besides the fundamental frequency present. All right, so yeah, we could kind of get more into that, kind of the physics of sound there. The bottom line is that a sawtooth wave has all frequencies, excuse me, all overtones present beyond the fundamental, and the square wave has, I want to say it's only the even fundamental, only the even overtones. I'm pretty sure that's correct. If somebody knows that I'm wrong, maybe they can correct me. But yeah, so let me pause for a second there. Does anybody have any question? Only odd overtones, somebody says. Okay, it's the odd overtones. So yeah, I mean, but the bottom line is, you know, when you listen to the square wave, you hear it has this kind of a hollow, reedy kind of sound. The sawtooth has maybe kind of a fuller sound, and then the sub is just adding an octave below. That's a little muddy. If we raise the whole thing. And so this synthesizer, we can do them in any combination. So we can do just the sawtooth, we can add the square to it, we can add the sub. So Yeah, we can't actually, somebody's asking if we can mix them. There's no mixer on this synth other than the sub oscillator has a mixer, so we can bring in the sub in varying amounts. So we can kind of sneak that in, which is cool. So that's a cool effect. So the sub oscillator is an analog control on this synthesizer. But again, it's very, very common, those controls. I'm going to actually, once I go through a couple parts of this Juno here, I'm going to show you the exact same thing on two other synths that I have here, just to drive the point home that if you basically learn one analog synthesizer, you know kind of all analog synthesizers. But that's the basics of your oscillators. Oh, one last thing here is that we have a noise oscillator, and noise is simply white noise. So as I bring this up, you're just going to hear white noise. And white noise on its own, well, actually, excuse me, I should not say white noise. I don't think that is truly white noise. Kind of a pet peeve of mine when people say white noise. The definition of white noise is actually equal energy at every frequency, right? Which is like, if you can imagine when we used to have, CRT television sets, and you would tune it to a channel where there was nothing coming in, you'd get white noise, which was super harsh and like painful to listen to. But anything that you would like want to fall asleep to, that kind of noise, that is not white noise. That is some kind of filtered, there's different types of noise, pink noise, brown noise. Brown noise is much more pleasant to listen to. So if you take some of those high frequencies out, it's going to be closer to brown noise. So yeah, but white the noise doesn't sound good on its own, but if you start to mix the pitch with some of the noise, it can sound cool, especially in a more complex sound. All right, so those are the basics of our oscillators. Any questions from the chat about what we're talking about so far? Otherwise, I'm going to move on to the next section. Yeah, we're going to talk about LFOs at a later time. Cool, okay. So the next thing I'm going to talk about here, so we've got the oscillator section, and there's some more stuff happening in the oscillator section, but I'm going to come back to it. So let's go over, we're going to skip over here, and we are going to look at the envelope. So between the oscillators and the envelope, we start to get the ability to make some interesting sounds. So an envelope, that's ENV right here. Okay, so envelope basically gives us the ability to shape a signal. All right, I'm trying to be purposely, general here, right? Because we can apply an envelope to different things. But in this case, the most common thing that we apply an envelope to, and the way this synth is hardwired, is we apply the envelope to the amplifier, which is actually right here. VCA stands for voltage controlled amplifier. So to review, digitally controlled oscillator, because even on the analog version of this synth, the oscillators were digitally controlled, which kept it really tightly in tune, but the amplifier was voltage controlled. And so ENV stands for envelope. Okay, so what do we see here on the envelope? We have the most common type of envelope on analog synthesizers. We have 4 different controls, ADSR. So ADSR stands for attack, decay, sustain, release. And this allows us, like I was saying, to shape an incoming signal. And in this case, it's going to be the volume. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift to a different pattern I put in here. Okay, so this is just a sequence with some chords in it. So right now, what you see is, actually, sorry, that's kind of a default envelope state, initialized envelope state. Attack, decay, sustain, release. All right, so let me just explain what each of these means, and then I will demonstrate what they sound like. So attack is the time the sound takes to fade in, essentially. Sustain is the level at which the sound sustains itself, like how loud it is as you're holding the note down. Decay is the amount of time it takes to fade to that level after the attack phase, and release is the amount of time it takes to fade into nothing after the note is over. Okay, so if we're looking at an envelope set like this, no attack, no decay, full sustain, and no release, we get essentially an organ sound, right? You hear it instantly, you hear it at full volume, and then it immediately goes away. Okay, but what happens if I play it and I start gradually bringing up the attack? What we're going to hear is it's going to start fading in because I'm increasing the attack. I'm increasing the amount of time it takes to get to that sustain level. And then as I bring it back down, it becomes instant again. Okay, now I'm going to do the same with release. What we hear with release is as I bring the release up, we're going to hear after the note is over, it's going to have a tail, you know, almost like a reverb. So now that we've got some attack and some release on it, we can hear it takes a second to fade in and a second to fade out afterwards. So it's just giving it that, it starts to sound a little bit like it could, you know, be part of a track. And if I just bring in this basic kick, you know, it kind of almost sounds like it's part of a track. So we all caught up with attack and release. Those are pretty straightforward, right? It gets a little bit slightly more interesting when we get into sustain and release. So like I was saying a minute ago, I'm sorry, sustain and decay. The sustain is a little different because rather than being a amount of time, like attack is the amount of time it takes to fade in, release is the amount of time it takes to fade out, sustain is the volume level that it sustains at. And sustain only really makes sense in the context of decay. So if I just manipulate sustain on its own, it functions as a volume knob. All it does is it brings the volume down. But if I do it in conjunction with decay, what it does now is decay tells you how long does the sound take to fade to this level that I've defined with sustain. So you see now you're sustaining at a really low level, and this is actually maybe not the best pattern. I'm going to switch back to this pattern here. Here we go. So you can get a real plucky sound that way by giving a pretty quick decay, and you can either give it no sustain even. So sustain is 0, and if you actually held the note down forever, it doesn't matter, it won't make any sound, but you're controlling how long it takes to fade out with the sustain, right? So watch as I manipulate the sustain. Or I'm sorry, the decay. So when we get down here, we get this real pluckiness to it. Then we can give it release. So the combination of those gives us a lot of possibilities, and it depends, of course, on what kind of material we're playing, you know, what the speed of it is, how long the notes are that we're holding, But that's the basics of how an ADSR envelope works. It's a pretty simple, there's only 4 things, but they interact in interesting ways. So that is pretty much our ADSR envelope. Anybody have any questions about envelopes that I could answer? Why was it called an envelope? Well, I guess that's a pretty good question. I mean, an envelope, if you can picture... I don't really know the historical reasons how it came to be named that way, like etymologically, but it sort of makes intuitive sense to me. Like, you have a signal, right? If you can picture a waveform, the envelope... Let's see, a synth... If you see these... let's see, can I push in? Do you see this little knob here to the left? Let's see, this little knob. So this is indicating that the envelope is activated. And if I turn it this way, the envelope is off. So that little illustration of an envelope, that's showing you what the envelope is doing to the signal, right? So, I don't know. It kind of makes sense to me. It's an envelope in the sense that it's containing and bounding the signal. I don't know. I don't have a great answer to that. Yeah, it constrains the exterior of the wave shape. That's what I'm saying. How do you get the Blade Runner Vangelis tone? I don't know. That's complicated. How do I get into sense if I'm poor and stupid? All right. Well, I'm gonna move on to the last little part that I'm going to demonstrate, and then I'm going to exit tutorial mode. But I hope that this was kind of interesting. The last thing that I want to talk about here is VCF, which is right here, and that stands for voltage controlled filter. So when we talk about analog synthesis, the most common type of synthesizer that we see, which all of the synths in front of me here is subtractive synthesis, also known as East Coast synthesis, after the Moog synthesizer, as opposed to West Coast synthesis, which is like the Buchla synthesizer, which don't ask me about because I don't know anything about how they work. But I do know about East Coast synthesizers, which are subtractive. So what does subtractive synthesis mean? It means that we start with a complex sound, which by complex we mean those waveforms that we had at the beginning, our sawtooth wave, our square wave, that have all of these overtones, right? They have all these frequencies, and then we put them through a filter. So that filter is over here. So first of all, I'm just going to let you hear what this sounds like when I start to play with a filter. And I'm going to bring in some envelope as well. All right, so hopefully that came through. You can hear what's happening. But to explain it, this filter here is what's called a low-pass filter. So what that means is it kind of what it sounds like. It only lets certain frequencies. It has, this slider here is defining a cutoff frequency. And the cutoff frequency tells you where that filter is going to engage. So if it's all the way up, the filter is not engaged. Really, it's not doing anything. It's you're not filtering, right? Because it lets all the frequencies below the cutoff pass, right? Because it's a low-pass filter. So if it's all the way up, it's letting everything pass. So we can hear everything. But as I start to bring it down, we're going to start to cut those high frequencies. So we're going to get this darker sound. So this is, like, to me, one of the most powerful, you know, interesting expressive tools in analog, well, in subtractive synthesis, right? Because we can start to build energy and tension and shape our sounds by playing with our low-pass filter over time. Because if we didn't have our low-pass filter, we'd just be kind of at full bore all the time, and it'd be really bland. But that low-pass filter really lets us kind of creep in and gradually increase. And it's a great way to build intensity. And just to demonstrate the same idea with this other figure with the chords. So it's kind of dark here, right? And then I start to bring it up. So that is a low-pass filter. Also, this is less significant on this particular synth, but same idea. We have another type of filter, and this is, we can see it says HPF. That stands for high pass filter. And let me just demonstrate what that sounds like. So depending on what kind of speakers you're listening on, I'm not sure what that sounded like to you, but what you should hear is when this is all the way down, you won't hear the filter doing anything. You'll hear the low end coming through, the bass notes coming through. And as I start to push it up, since this is a high pass filter, it's the opposite of the other one, it's going to start to cut more of the low frequencies. And on this synthesizer, I think of that as less of an expressive tool and more of a way to kind of clean sounds up for it to sit in a mix so that things don't get muddy. For instance, if I go back to this chord sequence, this is one I would use that high pass filter on, probably. Because you don't want to have, if you're mixing a track with a lot of elements in it, you don't want to have too many low frequencies competing with each other. But hopefully that makes sense. You can kind of hear the same idea happening with a low pass filter and a high pass filter, how they're cutting different frequencies. So yeah, we just went over some of the basics of DCO, digitally controlled oscillator. Just basically oscillators, VCF, voltage controlled filter, and the envelope. Oscillator, filter, envelope are the most kind of important parts. Like I said, there's more to it, a lot of other things we can do with those, but you're going to find those on all synthesizers. So any questions about those? Then I can show you real quick how the same things apply to some other synths, and then I'm just going to play a little bit. So let me see if anybody has any questions, but what I'll show you real quick, so I am going to change up the channel here, so it's gonna control this other synth, and I'm gonna go to manual mode, and just set my settings, and how I'm using the sequencer to bring this all together. Yeah, that's a good question. I think maybe that would be for another night. How do I get node information to Juno? Yeah, I do that with the sequencer, with the Digitact. I think talking about the Digitact would be a great topic for like another Young Chomsky synth hour. But yeah, this is the Electron Digitact. This is a great piece of gear. Mine needs some repairs. If I touch it the wrong way, it will just completely shut off, but I just try not to do that. But yeah, this is my sequencer. This has the sequencer, just means like you program notes into it, and then I don't have to fuck with playing the keyboard while I'm doing this stuff. And it can do a lot of stuff. But that's the main thing that I'm using this for. It's like a drum machine and a MIDI sequencer. So I program stuff into this, and then I can play it back and like do some people do amazing like real-time performance stuff on this thing. I'm not that handy with it. How often do I do these synth videos? This is the first one. Okay, so let me real quick just show you how the same ideas apply on different synths. So let's see. So we're now looking at the Roland Boutique SH01A. This is very similar. This is a remake of the SH101, another famous analog synthesizer. But again, here we have our oscillator section over here. We have a sawtooth wave. In fact, change it. Whoops, I did not. There we go. Square wave. Whoops, that's a square wave. And a sub. So you can see one of the cool things about this one is it actually has a mixer section for the oscillators. So these are variable, the amount that we can bring each of them in, as opposed to the Juno where it's just on or off as far as the square and pulse, or the square and the sawtooth go. So we can kind of and noise over here. But that's all the same. The VCF over here is the same, the voltage controlled filter. This one does not have a high pass filter, only a low pass filter. You know, like I was mentioning, the low pass filter is the kind of more important, more common one that you're going to see. And then envelope, we have the same concept. ADSR works the same way. So that's that one. And then lastly, let's jump down here and move my phone a little out of the way and look at the sequential circuits Prophet 6. Let me kill the effects happening on that. So there's more happening on this guy, but again, it's the same idea. So our oscillators are over here. We have, this is a little more complicated in that we have, we can actually vary the shape continuously of these oscillators. So we can go straight from sawtooth. I don't know how easy that is to see, but let's say, let me bring only this one in. So this one, I should say, is a real analog synth, not a digital emulation. This is actually analog. I love this synth. This is my newest synth that I added to my little setup over here. As you can see, I'm kind of, yeah, you can kind of see what I'm working with here. This is the amount of space that I have. So pretty much if I try to get something new, I sell something that I already have. And I hadn't gotten anything new in a while. I had a different, a little Yamaha tiny thing here, and I sold that so I could get this guy. I used to have two big 80s real analog synths. I had a Juno 106, I had an Oberheim Matrix 6, and they were super cool, but you know, you have to repair them, and they took up a lot of space. And now I have a bunch more instruments. I'm not really a purist about analog or anything. I like having compact stuff. Anyway, so point is, you have two oscillators here. There are, in fact, more controls on this. You can actually control the frequency separately of these. But again, it's the same idea. You still have sawtooth and square. You have, in fact, a mixer on here, so similar to the 101. I can bring in, let's say, let me turn the volume down a little bit. I can bring in just oscillator 1, and then start to bring in the second. Sub. Or if I go to the chord one. And then over here, so this one is also a little bit more complicated in that it has two separate envelopes. So we didn't really talk about what it means to do a filter envelope yet. I think I'll discuss that in the future if we do this again. But here's amplifier envelope. This is what I was talking about before. So go back to this first thing. Plucky sound, and here is my high pass filter. Whoop. Oh, sorry, I want my low pass filter. So, point being, hopefully you can see this is a more complicated synth. It can do more stuff, and yet we see on it the exact same concepts, the exact same features as we saw on these two other synths, which are simpler. We have the same ideas in the oscillator, the filter, and the envelope. So, I think that is going to wrap up my little Synth 101 tutorial. My track with neoliberal in it. Yeah, it's called Neoliberals. It's on my SoundCloud. Yeah, let me see if anybody has any questions about that stuff. I hope that was interesting to some of you. Oh yeah, the thing I was going to say too, if you want to make this stuff, if you found that interesting or you feel like you might be able to do it, which you totally can, you do not need a musical education to do this. I saw somebody earlier recommending the TAL, Togu audio line plugins. I second that recommendation really strongly. They have some free stuff that you can go and download. That's Togu, T-O-G-U audio line. So those are plugins that you would host in, you need a VST host like Reaper, or I think you can do it in GarageBand, but yeah, you can download Reaper for free. It's reaper.fm. And so Reaper is technically, you pay for it. A non-commercial license is $60. So I think you should pay for Reaper if you're using it because it's really great software. I mean, I paid for it a long time ago. $60, totally worth it. But you can totally use it for free for like 60 days. Or, I mean, you can use it forever. It'll just nag you to pay for it. But it's really good piece of software. So point is, you can download Reaper, and then you can use all these plugins, synth plugins, instruments, and you do MIDI. You don't even need a keyboard. You can just type stuff in. Now I find, obviously I like hardware because I like putting my hands on stuff. You know, instruments, I mean, other things too. But, you know, I just find that more creative. I talked about this, I think, in the Q&A. I used to make music in the computer. I record to the computer, but when I'm making the music that you hear in TrueAnon episodes, this is where it happens, because my brain is completely broken by Twitter, etc. And if I'm like on a computer, I cannot do stuff. So yeah, but it's a really, really easy, low barrier to entry. Great way to get started. There's so much shit you can download. So get Reaper, get the TAL Uno 62 is like a Juno. It's an emulation of that Juno that I was playing. There is Synth One is a great free synth. There's a company called Uhe, U-He, that they make this synth called Tyrell N6, which is a free synth, and they make also some really great commercial synths like Diva, one of my faves. If you're into this kind of sound, you know, like your kind of vintage synth sounds. So make a post with these. Yeah, I mean, sure, I can post this stuff. All right. So that being said, I wasn't sure how long this would take. I'm gonna play a little bit, and I'm limited in terms of my camera angle ability here, but I'm gonna point you this way, and let's see what I can do. So. Yeah, and if you have questions, you can DM me. I'll probably answer them. Prefer it when people DM me to like tell me that I'm handsome and they like my clothes and stuff, but I also will talk to people about synthesizers. That's my second favorite thing to talk about. All right, let's see. I'm trying to remember where I say I was very frantically preparing for this, like right beforehand. Bank 10. All right, I am going to turn the mic down for a second. And this is going to be a little ambient jam, hopefully. Let's see. All right. Hope you all heard that. I can't see the chat. Cool. Here's another one. Cool. Well, that was some ambient jamming for you. All right, I am gonna do one more because I want to end things on an energetic note, and I'm gonna kind of debut a track here. It's a little tricky to do this live, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Yeah. So yeah, I love ambient music. I love Brian Eno, and I love Steve Reich. Those are some of my favorite dudes. But I'm gonna play this one. So let's have a little fun with this, and hopefully this goes okay. I'm still working things out on this one, but let's see how it works. Yeah.
We've been on the front lines of corporate downsizing. The front lines of corporate downsizing. The front lines of corporate downsizing. We've been on the front lines of corporate downsizing. The front lines of corporate downsizing.
Consulting company that had a client that may have been involved in fixing road prices. Road prices. Road prices. Road prices.
prices. Mixing bread prices.
All right, there you have it, world premiere. I'm gonna assume that, everybody's applauding. Well lit. Oh, that was so lit. It was also well lit, I think. Cool. Well, thank you very much for tuning in, and that's exactly an hour. I feel really good about that. I feel like I timed that really well. Well, I can take questions for a couple minutes. Names of other projects. Resistor was one of my past projects. I have used some of the Resistor tracks as interstitial music in TrueAnon. And Chomsky took shots at Hanukkah this week. No, I don't think so. Do I have an octatrack? No, just the Digitact. Can I do a video on workout? I've done a couple workout videos. I might do more. I don't know. It's a pain in the ass to do those, but maybe. How tall am I? I'm 6 foot. Please do more in the future. I would love to. Thank you for tuning in. What should I use at the core of my DAW list setup? Mono machine. I don't know. I hear mono machines are nice. I really like the Digitact. I mean, I like the Digitact because physical space is a priority for me. Like, it's small. When I got it, I like that it's simple. You know, it's weird. Like, I'm smart enough to like figure shit out, but if an instrument's got, like menu diving, right, is a thing. That's a common term where like if features are hidden behind a lot of button pushing and knob twisting, I'm liable to just fuck off and lie on the couch and look at Twitter, you know? Like I said, I'm deeply diseased mentally. So I need something that's like immediate and accessible, and like the Digitact does that for me. The Octatrack is like a bigger, more complicated version. Maybe that would be good, but I really like the Digitact. It does have some glitches and bugs they're still working out, but I'm a fan of it. I do recommend it. Like, there's a lot of good solutions. I think you really just need to do a little research, which is a pain, but like commit to something. This has worked out for me. But people, you know, like I said, some people go all software, and that works. I think you really need to play around a bit. You know, start with something that's inexpensive or free or affordable for you. But this took me years, and who knows if this is like the final form of my setup. But it took me a long time before I started doing it this way, and I feel like I'm much more productive this way than I used to be, which is a real struggle for me. So, yeah. What made me switch from all software to physical? Yeah, I mean, you know, I feel like it's just what I was talking about, just feeling like uninspired by being on the computer and too distracted by everything else. The synth on the bottom right, that is a Novation Bass Station 2. I've had that synth longer than anything else you see here. Yeah, I meant to give a quick, I talked about the Digitact, the Prophet, the Juno, and the SH. The other things you see are Strymon. I have a Strymon reverb and a Strymon delay. Other thing is just a mixer. You can't see what I'm pointing at, but it's just a big mixer, and, well, it's a mixer and an audio interface, which is nice. It's a Soundcraft mixer and audio interface, which is cool because I actually worked this out just today. Hopefully everything sounded good that you were listening to. Hopefully you could hear everything really clearly. That's because this is actually, it lets you stream. It's the Soundcraft, the name of it's escaping me, but it's you can stream multi-channel over USB. So I can actually record all this shit at once to my laptop. I used to have a mixer. I essentially had to go and record every instrument separately in a separate pass when I wanted to actually record, you know, as though I were doing it to tape, which was like, it made me not want to record. It just took too long to do. So I can just one go, you know, essentially like perform it like I just did and put that to hard drive. My drum samples of choice. That's a good question. I don't know. I have so many, to be honest. I think a lot of people have this problem that it's almost like I have too many and it's hard to choose. I have certain ones that I go to, I guess. All the classics, you know, I like The 707 is one of my favorites, the Lindrum, the DMX, but it's kind of like, how do you process them? How do you use them? There's, I don't know if I have anything more intelligent than that to say off the top of my head about drum samples. Will I do style vids? Maybe. Yeah, that would be cool. I'd have to think about it if people are interested. Style tips for women? I have none. I can't speak about women's fashion. I mean, I know it when I see it. I don't really have anything to offer on that front. Yeah, samples from Mars. Thoughts on Eurorack is I don't want to get into it because I think it's a rabbit hole. I mean, I'm sure it would be fun. Eurorack is, I was talking at the beginning about modular synthesizers where, you know, some people, it's still a thing. So like all the synths that you can see that I have are like fixed architecture. You buy a synth and it has all the parts and it's just a thing. Modular synthesizers are where you buy separate modules and you buy an enclosure and you construct your own synthesizer and then you patch things together. So Eurorack is one type of modular synthesizer. I mean, the cliche is that people who get into modular stop making music, they just start making bleeps and bloops and they just have a whole wall of their house that lights up and makes beeps and boops. I mean, I'm sure it'll be really fun. Again, I like to tweak and fuck around and make sounds, and I get into that. I like the technical aspects of it, but I also, you know, I'm influenced by, like, I have like pop instincts, you know, or desires. Like, I think it comes across that I have this kind of poppy structure and tendency to my stuff. I used to make like indie pop music where I would sing and play guitar, and I can't totally let go of that. So, you know, just purely kind of abstract improvisational, you know, I need to be a little grounded, and to me immediacy of this kind of gear is really helpful to me. So I don't know, I've been very resistant to the idea of diving down that rabbit hole. It's also really expensive, and it's like once you start you go deep. I mean, it's like getting into cars or something. Who are my influences? It's a good question. I don't know how to answer that. I mean, I like vaporwave stuff. I like all the big vaporwave people. Vectroid, Death's Dynamic Shroud, I've been listening to recently. One Tricks Point Never. M83 is like a really long time, you know, I haven't listened to him in a minute, but like spent a lot of time listening to M83 over many years. I think, you know, he's a guy who really brings together a lot of the things I love, like the big epic kind of cinematic sounds and like the pop sensibilities and the electronic stuff. So I love M83. Also, he did that ambient album. Obviously the ambient guys I was mentioning earlier, Eno, I love Brian Eno. I love Terry Riley and Steve Reich. I think, you know, that's the kind of stuff that influences me, and those real ambient pieces that I played earlier. Yeah, as far as the kind of stuff that I make these days, those are some of the things. I mean, you know, and I listen to a lot of synthwave. Yeah. I listen to Haircuts for Men. I don't know that band. Have I heard of Blade Runner? Yes. Tangerine Dream, love it. Sun Ara. Yeah, I think that's how you pronounce that. I don't know. Yeah, I like those guys. Or those people, I don't know. Let's see. Anybody else does much? How do you slide into my DMs? Like, I don't know how you mean that. Like, my DMs are open. Like, what's a good... I can't tell you what a good line is. You're gonna have to figure that out for yourself. This is nice, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Isn't it great with no Brace and no Liz to really bring down the mood? No, I'm just kidding. We love them, don't we, folks? Yeah, I miss them too. I do, honestly. I've been alone in my apartment for a long time. Oh boy. Okay, well, all right. A couple more quick ones, then I'm gonna wrap this up. Yes, turtleneck enthusiast. Where's Ghislaine? I don't know. Some good synthwave groups. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, there's so many. Let me see. Let me see if I can just look at Spotify and see if anything. Oh, yeah, Makeup and Vanity Set. One of my faves. Let's see. Who else? Like Miami Nights 1984, Perturbator. These guys aren't synthwave, or I don't know if they're guys. But French 79. I heard them on like an Instagram ad recently, which is funny. But they're like electronic. I don't know how to describe them. I love French 79. I love Chrome Sparks. Chrome Sparks is one of my favorite dudes. I've seen him live multiple times, and he's been amazing live. I love Comtrues. I think that's probably an obvious one. Those two guys are probably both really significant influences on my music. Your Chrome Sparks and your Comtrues. But yeah, listen to French 79. Listen to those two dudes. If you can see Chrome Sparks live. Emil Rotmeyer. He's great. Oh, and also two more that are... I just love the way these guys sound. And to me, I grouped these guys together. They were really similar sounds to the point where I was convinced they were the same person, but I'm pretty sure they're not. Home is this guy, Randy. I follow him on Twitter. It's like Home with periods in between. He hasn't... I don't think he's put anything out in a minute. But he did that track Resonance a few years ago that was like everywhere, and he just, I think he streams on Twitch sometimes, like doing synth stuff. It's really fun. And Allison, it's like stylized similarly with all caps and periods. Allison is also really great. I just love that, got that great like hazy kind of nostalgic sound. So yeah, I don't know anything about who is behind Allison, what their gender is or anything like that, but I really like Allison. All right. Anything else? Do I like Kate Bush? Yeah. The episodes have little interludes. Are those original compositions? Yes. Those are pretty much generally mine. Sometimes they are things that I am working on. A lot of times they are, sometimes they're tracks that I've released in the past, either as Young Chomsky or as Resistor. A lot of times they're things that I started a long time ago and just discarded on my hard drive, and I'm finding a use for them, which is really fun. Like I have things that I made like 4 years ago and were like almost finished, but I thought like, oh, this isn't quite done. This needs like lyrics and I need to record vocals on this, and I just went back to it and I'm like, oh, this actually sounds really dope, and it ended up finding a home in a TrueAnon episode. And then people will ask like, oh, where's the full thing? And like, no, there is no full thing. That's it. But yeah, pretty much I decided at the beginning of TrueAnon that I was gonna do all the music. I mean, obviously, I sometimes will use New Order track or whatever, but I try to use as much of my own music as I can. Do you like Black Moss Super Rainbow? Alright. Well, I think I'm going to wrap it up. But I want to thank you all for joining me for Young Chomsky's Synth Hour. And keep tuning in. I think we're going to be back tomorrow night for your standard TrueAnon stream, and I think I will be joining Liz and Brace for that one. So if you have more questions for me, you can ask me then. So this is real fun, and I hope everybody had a good time. I hope you all learned a little bit about synthesizers. And yeah, if you like this, let me know. I would love to do it again, and we'll talk more about filters and envelopes and modulating filters with envelopes, and we'll talk about low frequency oscillators and all sorts of things. So think about what you want to know if you have specific questions, because I love talking about this shit. It's super fun. Cool. Everybody have a great night. Stay safe. This is Young Chomsky signing off.